Right, hello. Episode 10, Out of Bounds. Who'd have thought I got this far? This week is going to be a bit of an unusual one in a few different aspects. First and foremost, because I'm doing this directly off of the back of having what I would call a Skype drink with a fella out in Japan and that. So I've already had a couple to get me going. So who knows where this is going to lead. But I've got no choice. I've got to get this done today, and that because I'm going out on the piss again tomorrow. So anyway, right, let's get started. Like I said, there's a few things that have happened within this week that have determined how this particular episode is going to progress. Most distinctly in terms of the faux effing segment. I'll be giving a little bit of attention to somebody, a World Economic Forum member, no United Nations this week. I'll be concentrating on the World Economic Forum member for reasons that will become apparent as we continue through. So, I want to give a little bit of a shout out, and that I will be putting some links in the description. I mean, I don't really know that you need to have links for this, to be honest, because I'm just at Paul Buckingham. But I'm now on Parler and Minds, and I'm on these two sites for the key reason that I got chucked off of I got chucked off of LinkedIn. I'm sure somebody in LinkedIn thinks that I give a shit, which I don't, but it was quite amusing. I've been having a go at various people, justifiably so, on LinkedIn for quite some time. I tend to concentrate a lot on the Blue Socialists, the Conservative Party, most particularly because historically I have been a Conservative, and so to see this lot be anything but Conservative, it requires a lot of pointing out, and they need to be informed of the displeasure. And I mean, some of the posts, I mean, there's people out there that will know me from LinkedIn and they will know that some of the stuff that I've put out has been not exactly holding back on my opinions. And the one that seems to have flagged and got the attention to have me removed was that I can't remember what the actual subject matter was now, but it was yet another one of these stupid nonsense things about the idiotic decisions over this Ponzi China virus that they seem to make up new shit on a daily basis to try to scare everybody in that so they can push through the Great Reset. So I basically put up that they no longer had authority in the UK, and because they no longer have authority in the UK, they would be best to spend their time blowing the Rothschilds, Rockefellers and Soros et al. So it obviously didn't go down well. It was even more formal than what I have said on occasion in the past, but hey, people that are not afraid to use the English language in all its forms do tend to be subject to a few issues these days, shall we say. What I will say as a very key part to this is that I have been given something, because I mean when I was removed from LinkedIn, I'd developed a reasonable number of contacts and followers and what have you, and one very kind connection that's fortunately I'm still managing to keep in touch with, has been letting me know that there has been some nice comments about me and that, and the fact that they kind of miss their daily dose of Paulisms and my little rants and raves about various subjects. So I'm going to give a bit of a shout out and a few thanks. Obviously Christina above all, she knows it. there's a couple of people that she's taken some screenshots of some of the comments from people and that have made some comments, and the list is not endless by any stretch. So it's just these few people that I want to give a little bit of a thanks to, and that's Bob Darby, Tom Maley, Pauline, who got in touch with me personally as well, and David Bassler. I know there are others that have been making certain comments as well. I'm sure they think pretty much the same as me, that it comes as no surprise really. I think David Proud said that he wasn't particularly surprised. But ho hum, we move on. Like I say, I mean, anybody that's out there that thinks that if you get chucked off of these sites, yes, it is quite apparent that anything that moves outside of the single train of thought, they are trying to close down as much as possible. And that even goes so far across a whole range of different social media that they're particularly targeting conservative thinkers. But I urge everybody to think, well, okay, if you get chucked off of these sites, fuck them. Just move on to the next one that might not be as good as what you was at, but give them time. I mean, the likes of LinkedIn and Facebook and that, they all started somewhere. They were never brilliant to begin with. And I think I was with LinkedIn, Christ, going back to very near the start date. Because there was another one that I joined at the same time, which is now called Xing, Xing. I am still on there, but I don't really do much. And things like Parler, as much as they say that, well, we're for free speech, I have noticed they're not. If you use certain terminology, which I am prone towards, yeah, you don't get to post it. So, well, I'm giving it a go. So if there's anybody out there that wants to sort of connect up, and you can find me on Parler, and now you can find me on Minds as well. I'm finding Minds a little bit better in so much that you can do personal messages. It's not a decent sized message box by any stretch, but the graphics quality on Minds is exceptionally good. And like I said, I'm getting used to it, so you can find me in other places. But like I say, it's I don't give a shit. So I'm going to move forward onto something else now, and that in terms of all of this continued crap of what we all knew was coming, and this absolute intention to just drag all of this crap out and to go, oh no, it's a second wave, it's a second wave, it's a couple of weeks, and that to make sure that you flatten the curve and all this sort of stuff. It's bullshit, and we know it's bullshit. But the one campaign that I've not seen and I would like to see get going is based on what you can see on the screen here, and that because the number of people that are pushing all of this bullshit are very, very few. They really are just a few idiots. And when you follow the chain up, it's just another couple of idiots that are largely the result of incest. So, I mean, I've mentioned that before, and if they check between the fingers, they've probably got webs in there. But everything that gets shoved down people's throats always ends up being a result of the general public themselves doing it. They end up doing the dirty work for those few idiots, and none more so than the police. I'm sure at a later stage somebody would try. I mean, if there was enough of an uproar and that, they'd probably try and get the army involved and all this sort of nonsense and that, anything to try to suppress people as they continue to plunder through everything, and they were their Great Reset control program. So how about having a bit of a campaign that has something like this, where you remind the police that you don't actually work for those people, that the people that make up the police force are part of the public, and they police by consent. Do a little bit of the reverse psychology on these people. So as much as they're turning around and trying to scare the shit out of everybody, and that with the usual of invisible bollocks, and where they'll come out with completely the opposite to what they said yesterday to try to make everybody wonder what the fuck is going on and try to be submissive, and then to try to, I don't know, I can't remember, I did have the proper word in my head, but it's gone now. This is what the problem is with having a drink beforehand. Demoralise, there we go, that's it. When they try to demoralise the general public. How about trying to, like I say, do that reverse psychology and that, let the police, let the army, let the people know that are the ones that they use to enforce this shit, let them know that they need to be on the right side of this. Well, I suppose it's gradually becoming more and more of a fight against totalitarian states. Because if enough of these people actually sat back and thought, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I going out and arresting innocent people? Why am I going out and, whether you're arresting people or pushing people around or fining people or doing all of this nonsense, all off of the back of complete and utter bollocks. These people, they live in our communities. They are us. They are the citizens in uniform. We pay their wages. Maybe they might need to remember who exactly they are and who their orders actually do come from. So, bit of a recommendation. Push something like this forward, and then we can see if we can't have a little bit of a pushback in a reasoned fashion before we do the whole Guy Fawkes thing. So anyway, moving on. Now, there's a bit of the Sisyphus complex solution that I'm going to be doing this week, and it's just 2 departments within the Cabinet Office, and it's based around boundaries. Now, the two boundary commissions that are underneath the Cabinet Office are for England and for Wales. That dictates, and when I look through the map of government so far, Scotland has the devolved one, so does Northern Ireland. We'll deal with them when I come to it. But if we have a look at the Boundary Commission for England and Wales, there's been arguments around this one for quite some time now, with very little movement, which does kind of give a bit of a justification as to why questions should be raised, because of the amount of money that I've got up there, 669,000. That's the 2 combined. Obviously, the one at the office in England, and that makes up the vast majority of that. I think the Welsh one is only something like about 150 grand. But when you're looking at what it is that they're actually doing, you do kind of wonder what you need an office for, because there's no way that anybody needs to turn up on a daily basis to be dealing with this crap. But we've got the basis here, and so I've put the details at the top so you can understand. The number of seats in the UK at the moment is 650. Now, what they're trying to do is reduce, the suggestions that they're making is to reduce that to 600. That's what the graph is below, what that suggestion is, and which areas will be losing MPs, and what that overall picture will be made up of. I still don't actually agree with it, but I'll move into that as we go forward. Right, now the problem that strikes me immediately is that Greater London alone has 73 MPs out of that 650. There's the UK landmass of the 244,000 square kilometres. Greater London only making up 0.64% of that. Now, when we think about this in terms of how politics to date has essentially had this, I mean, you'll get variations of this in different in different countries. I think there is commonality around this, in so much as that there's an awful lot of preference given to certain locations. Obviously, within the UK, there's a lot of preference towards London, and what that means is you're then seeing other areas that are neglected. The kind of neglect that takes place here is something that can potentially be resolved without the government essentially, and that being the ones responsible for how any particular area and how the people actually go about their daily lives. I mean, it is a genuine consideration that people in different regions need to really get a grip of their own location and try to make the best of what they've got and make it better, because it's plainly obvious that government doesn't do it for them, and it doesn't matter what colour that is. You can have your Labour in there consistently, they don't do anything. You can have your blue socialists in there. They're, I mean, Christ almighty, at the moment they're really targeting the north, aren't they? If, as much as you can see from the map that I've got, that I've decided to put up there, and that shows the Conservative vote at this stage. That's how they managed to get their 80-seat majority in the House of Commons. An awful lot is down to them gaining blue seats up north. With all these shutdowns and the way that they're targeting them, especially right now, they're going to lose them at the next election, and I think that election will come an awful lot sooner than people think. It sure as shit won't last 5 years, I know that much. But what we do see is that in terms of when government is providing any assistance to development, new infrastructure and things of this nature, there is the concentration, particularly in London. I know lots of people say, well, okay, look, they concentrate on the south. Trust me, they don't. It is very much London centric. The further south you get, the less of a shit they give. We end up with the exact same problem that you get up in north. So to me, it makes sense that we need to be looking towards how do we actually rectify this type of problem. So there's further considerations into this particular part. And again, it doesn't require a department to do this sort of thing. I mean, with the once we've gone through this entire process, the civil service that you will have remaining would be more than capable of putting something like this together, and there's a very good reason why, as much as it would be further reduced, as we'll get to in time. Because what we have to understand is, you've got your MPs, you've got your 650 constituencies as things stand. If anybody out there thinks that your local MP is actually doing something for your local area, you are delusional. You seriously are. The people the way that the system is set out, you've got your MPs that will sit in the House of Commons, then you've got your councils, then you've got your parish councils. That's why I put the numbers up as to what that equates to. So the 343 councils, and then there's 9,000 parish councils. Now, do they all work together effectively? No. And this again would be a part of the recreation of the system, and that providing the solution to it, to have a much more streamlined and efficient hierarchy, and one where you have much more responsibility, accountability, transparency, and real service to the constituency that they're all supposed to be serving, irrespective of what level of tasks that it is that they're supposed to be performing. So, what I had thought, if you think back to well, you're not going to think back, and I'm not going to go back. From the previous slide, you'll have noticed that if we were to think about having things divided up on a relatively equal level, and then have this represented in terms of the voting system as well. So you don't get this heavy concentration of MPs in one location and then them trying to push everything through just for them. It wouldn't, the way that I'm thinking of things, that it wouldn't work out precisely in the way that I'm saying, because I don't see the point in going so far as to redraw boundary maps in terms of a particular geographical location. So, for example, where I am in Thanet, I'm not talking about changing where the boundaries of that is. I'm not going to turn around and say, well, okay, Ramsgate now becomes Margate. None of that sort of nonsense. What I'm talking about is the constituency boundary. And you can work out on a grid, more or less, a reasonably equal geographical structure. Now, if you was to take it on the plan basis of 600 MPs, and then you equated that out on a grid, you'd work out with an area of something like around about, I think it works out 408 square kilometres. So within each geographical location, that would be equal in terms of geography alone. Where people will turn around and think, well, okay, that becomes a problem because you have different population densities. My case against that is that that's what you've got your councils for. That's what you've got your parish councils for. Because you don't genuinely have an MP that realistically, at least in the current format, pays all that much attention to what's happening locally. And an awful lot of the times you'll get an MP that's actually just been shoved into an area because they think that they want to give them a seat. It doesn't matter if they actually come from there or not. They probably don't know bugger all about most of the places that they're sitting in. That again would be part of the structure, because as far as I'm concerned, the MP would be much more involved with the council, with the parish councils. There would be that hierarchy locally as well. So you've got somebody that is genuinely representing your area. Now, where this takes good effect, as far as I'm concerned, is that if you did things on a geographical basis, the number of MPs that you've got for London, like I say, currently at 73. I think the suggestion was for the reduction down to 600, and that they only took something like about 3 seats away from London. I mean, it was ridiculous. In my suggestion, London at best would have 4 MPs. Now, if that wouldn't take away some of the concentration of favourability towards London, I don't know what would. It seems like a fairer solution across the country, as far as I'm concerned. People would have properly equal representation in terms of geography. And that's where it falls in line with, you have a lot of conversation that's going on at the moment, and well, has been for some years now, in terms of the voting system itself and wanting to have proportional representation. That, I think that, if I remember rightly, that became a particular conversation because of the 2015 election, when UKIP got a large portion of the vote across the country, but I don't think they won any seats, or they had maybe 2 seats. In terms of the voting block by population, they didn't end up with anywhere near the number of seats that they would have done if you'd have looked at the population on that basis. So there has been this conversation around this proportional representation type of system. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that because it makes much more sense, again, when you're looking at it from a geographical perspective, that if the people of that area have decided by a majority vote in that area, so that first past the post system, that they want a particular MP to sit there, then that's what they should get. Just because people across the country ended up with more people wanting to vote for a particular party somewhere else, that doesn't mean to say that that's what they wanted. And that's why I don't really go along with the lines of this proportional representation. Win your seat in your local area and do it fairly in your local area and win by majority vote. Simple as that. As I say, when you turn around and look towards how geographical locations are taken care of correctly according to the population density of that area, that's what you got your councils for. So you might have an MP that needs a bit more support. Now, up until now, and that you'll have certain MPs that will have their own little office and their own little staff anyway. Now, because my suggestion would be that the MPs have much more of a relationship with the council, which means that you no longer need somebody like a chief executive of a council, because, again, this creates another problem where you've got the MPs that will say one thing, the council will say something completely different, and it is where you get that disconnect in terms of when you've got a new piece of legislation that says, okay, now, so perfect example is this immigration issue that we're having at the moment, where you'll have Priti Patel will say, okay, right, we are now going to implement a particular policy that means that we're going to stop all of these people coming over. Well, then you'll have the actual civil servants and the public servants that are supposed to be undertaking that role, taking their instructions from the person that is slightly above them within their lower grade department, and it's just a case of well we don't want to, or no, well we're going to do it slightly differently, or whatever. They don't actually follow what they've been instructed to do. So that's why that hierarchy system is just it's completely disconnected. And that's why you end up with a really bizarre situation where on a number of occasions you'll have people say, well, this particular MP is running this particular department, therefore they are the head. And if what has been what legislation has been put in place is not implemented, it's their head that must roll. Well, it's a bit of a difficult position if the people that you've been giving the instruction to are not going to follow your bloody instructions. There's nothing you can do about that in the current system. So that's why I'm looking towards having something that is more representative on a geographical basis, fairer across the country, and then recreating the MP, council, parish council system so that the population density is taken care of correctly in those locations, and not destroying the voting system, not going towards this proportional representation, because I think that ends up, I mean, the countries that do run that kind of thing, that they do tend to have more hung parliaments than anybody else, you know. So you'll end up with a parliament where you've got two opposing sides in that, and so fighting so much that they never get anything bloody done. That makes no sense to me. Key point, let's get some of this accountability, responsibility of what government actually is responsible for achieving for the nation and taking care of within the nation. Let's have that spread fairly across the country, not done on a bit here, bit there basis, if you see what I mean. I mean, it shouldn't be that bloody difficult to understand, but anyway, this is the kind of suggestion that I'm making around this. What we'll do with Scotland and Northern Ireland, obviously not, because you're still end up with the same number of MPs and that. I mean, the same thing would apply to them. As much as they'll probably start screaming and shouting and going, oh, well, we're devolved, we'll make up our own mind. No, we're a single nation, and that's the way it is. And then you win the elections in your area, and then you do what you want there. We'll deal, like I say, we'll deal with the devolved stuff when we get to it a little bit later on. It's quite a small portion that I'm dealing with today in terms of the actual Sisyphus complex solution and the tiny element towards going towards creating this, the recreation of the Hoskins wiring map. But it's an important part, because it would actually result in a very major shift as to how we run politics in the country. So a fair whack of thought, small solution, usually best, I find. Again, feel free to say yay, nay, I've got a different idea. Chip in, make yourself known. Oh, I forgot I've got the solution written down. This is why you're not supposed to have a drink before you do these things. So yes, there you go. I had got it was 400 kilometres squared. Yes, I was right. MPs 3, possibly 4, not 73. Yep. Yeah, okay, I was right. So I'm not losing my memory completely. So this is the part that I wanted to concentrate on this week. Here's what the Cabinet Office looks like as we stand at the moment. Like I say, it's bit by bit, build the process, understand what the situation is, understand where there is potential problems, look towards providing a solution. That's what the whole process is about. Investigate, find any issues, solve them. Don't just sit there and bitch and moan about it. So this is what we look like at the moment. There's the subtotal purely for Cabinet Office expenditure. It's gradually going up. It's not going up in any massive amounts, but it's still going up. And like I say, when we come to add it all together, we'll see how well that tallies with the budgets that they've been giving. so we can see if the government actually knows how to run numbers, which is always a pretty important part, I would have thought. So the adding of the policy developments, I mean, I'm coming to a stage now in that where I might have to just include it one by one, and then at certain stages, after so many episodes, go, right, okay, here's what the full picture looks like, but just sticking on one at a time, because this screen is going to get pretty bloody full fairly soon. So at the bottom here, and that I've just got that we reform the Boundary Commission for England and Wales. That's the sum total of that particular part of things. Okay? So, I've got loads of bloody notes this week. I said there's an awful lot of work that goes into this, you know, and I don't just sit there and make this shit up as I go along. Possibly. Right, so I want to get into this bit.
Fuck off! Who you think you are, you cheeky fucking twat!
Now this is going to be the one that I'm going to enjoy a little bit, because I will have some accusation here and that I'm only doing it because of. Well, to a degree, yes. But I'm also doing this because, nevertheless, a member of the World Economic Forum. So it was only a matter of time before I got round to it. But due to the events of this past week, I've decided to go in a little bit more detail than I would normally. So we get to LinkedIn. There's a few slides to come with this one. LinkedIn, oh dear, what have you done? Right, there's a few separate stories here and that, and then I'm going to go into some stuff as to what else a certain Mr. Hoffman is involved with. Now, what you have to remember is that LinkedIn, started by Reid Hoffman, and essentially this is somebody that piggybacked off of the back of Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. He made his money in PayPal, the same as those two guys, but they were the ones that actually were responsible for starting it and doing the hard work. He was just the fat cunt that turned up at the end and made the best out of it afterwards. You got to love them people, aren't you? Now, in terms of what he's been up to and what LinkedIn has been up to, you can notice there's a couple of the graphics here and that about LinkedIn's involvement with China. I did know about a lot of this sort of stuff when it really started to take place. It is fairly recent that they've been kissing the communists' arse. Only over the last couple of years. But there's so you can see the bit at the top and that's in order for them to be in China, they've had to do, as all these tech companies do in China, the Chinese use side is very heavily censored. Now, what has that done in terms of how they've had the crossover? Well, then that's enabled the likes of the censorship tools that you're seeing being put out at LinkedIn, particularly over the last few months. And it is very much based on the developments to do with the World Economic Forum, compliance with China, and also an absolute determined hatred of Donald Trump. So, the Chinese part. You suddenly had a glut of Chinese people turning up in LinkedIn, of which it would be ridiculous of me to say that every single one of them and that are bad people, because they're not. But of the 41 million that came in, there's a fair bit of, if you look at the bit at the bottom, and that there's spying taking place, a bit of espionage, which was divulged. Now, where that plays a very important part is that certain people have certain understandings around Industry 4.0. You have people that turn around and say, well, it's the fourth industrial revolution. It's not. It's the fourth industrial evolution. I mean, for Christ's sake, there's some organisations that still haven't managed to get a grip of the third industrial revolution, let alone the fourth. And a lot of the technology that is based around the fourth industrial revolution is still part of the imagination rather than actually existing. So there's parts of that people need to get a bit of a better understanding of. There are benefits to Industry 4.0. There are a huge number of benefits in manufacturing. Where the problem has become within the models that are presented, and this is very, very specific to high value manufacturing, where they want to see all of these systems integrated, and for reasons I never really quite understood, they have pushed the social media aspect of that. So within something like LinkedIn, you'll get, if everybody remembers and that anybody that's used it, you've got your groups set up. Now, quite often you will get high value manufacturing organisations that have set up a group of their own, so they will have locations in various parts of the world as well as various parts of their own country. And the people that are employed within that organisation, they're all going into this group. Now, not to a overly ridiculous extent, but from time to time there are elements of innovation discussions and certain documents that potentially shouldn't be put on locations like that, that are passed around, sort of posted on these sites for people in other locations, and that's be able to look at and provide their input, opinions, etc., etc. Well, what you've been having is the Chinese espionage people getting into those groups, and then essentially getting a good look at what innovations other people are producing, what it is that they're planning, what the system of that organisation is, any new ideas that they've got, more specifically any technologies that they can borrow. So in terms of the high value manufacturing in particular, they need to be very, very careful as to what they're putting in groups in places like LinkedIn. It shouldn't really need saying too much, but because, like I say, when I've seen the models of what people are considering to be Industry 4.0, and you do tend to find an awful lot of people on these sites that you wouldn't really expect to see there, at least not openly telling the public who they are, what their position is, etc., etc., and they're generally quite available. This then means that they are open to that kind of problem, and that is something that has become a bigger problem over the last couple of years. So people that are working in these larger organisations and that are trying to follow this roadmap to Industry 4.0, you might want to be a little bit more cautious as to what you're doing with this, because people like Reid Hoffman, up the arse of the Chinese Communist Party, he don't give a shit. So you might want to be aware of things like that. I mean, for me myself, when I was on there, and I had a purge of the contacts that were and followers that were in my network that came from China, because I had a good look at them, and you can pretty much quite easily understand who's genuine and who's not. So I know that a lot of people turn around, that they have the problem of the people turning around saying, oh, well, I'm a Bitcoin salesman, and that those sort of people, and they're just fucking chancers. This particular other element of it, and that is a little bit more sinister. So you might want to be careful of that. Second part to this is that when you've got all of this I mean, the last 4 years, anybody that pays any attention to America and that the amount of lunacy that has taken place from the Democrats and the Democratic supporters, and particularly all the nonsense around foreign interference into elections. Well, Reid Hoffman himself was responsible for interfering in was it the 2017 Senate election in Alabama. I mean, he turned around and said, I didn't know what they were doing. So basically, he puts money into particular organisations on the basis of him saying, I thought they were trying to promote the Democrat Party. Well, this fella, and that is one of these, he's very much gone into it's the venture capital side of things, and then it's also the bullshit philanthropy side of things. And when you're at a particular level and when you're involved in a particular industry, especially with venture capital, the one thing that you are aware of is how to conduct due diligence. So for you to give money over to an organisation that didn't previously exist, and to say that you didn't know what they were doing, and you go, oops, sorry about that, that makes you a fucking liar. As simple as that. It really does. So this is somebody who will be screaming and shouting about Trump and going on about the Russian collusion and the collusion in the Ukraine and the collusion with this and the collusion with that. And yet this is the prick that is actually interfering in elections, putting up pages and that with false information. And yet it's okay for him to say, oh, sorry, didn't know about that. Aren't people supposed to be put in prison for things like that? Then you've got his efforts trying to get a whole network of people. I mean, obviously in that from the usual suspect sites. This guy's got the best connection, the best network in Silicon Valley. As he arse. And he's getting all these people to get together and that and throw all these funds towards trying to get rid of Trump. The thing is with people like that is they always end up with ideas above their station. I've noticed that there are a range of different publications in particular that are trying their absolute best to find out where the money people in places like Silicon Valley in particular, where they're putting their money, who it is that they're backing, etc., etc. I've seen a few articles in that where they're trying desperately to find out who it is so they can try to cancel them and all the rest of that bollocks. This fucker is sticking money into that kind of utter nonsense. I mean, this is the sort of person that will put money into trying to push this cancel culture, which is exactly why you're seeing an awful lot of conservatives that are being thrown off of LinkedIn, because this is the atypical Trump's derangement syndrome. And before anybody turns around and tells me, but it's been overtaken by Microsoft, I'm well aware of that, and Microsoft will get theirs when the time comes. But it's this guy and the people that work with him that run LinkedIn, and it's quite clear what it is that they're doing. Fortunately for those of us that know better, as much as they're going to try to dig around and say, who are the people in Silicon Valley that have got the money and that, so that we can try to either persuade them to become a Democrat or to cancel them for daring to have an opinion that doesn't fall in line with their sheep view. Well, suffice to say, when you've got a little bit of brains and that, it's actually not that difficult to figure out who's who. And if he thinks he's one of the big boys, he fucking well isn't. The nice little part that I like to include with the red title just above me. This is the fella that's got his nice little cosy relationship with paedophiles. Yay! So you sit in on LinkedIn and that and go, oh, I'm using my nice little paedophile network. Because the assistance, I mean, in terms of the rehab that it says in the headline, this was trying to assist Jeffrey Epstein after he'd served time for being a pedo. So when he came out, so he's basically doing a Prince Andrew. Didn't figure, oh, well, the guy's a pedo, so I best not have anything to do with him. No, he came in and tried to help him. I mean, let's face it, I mean, the guy looks like exactly what you'd expect in terms of somebody that would hang around with the likes of Epstein. Because sure as shit ain't going to get laid on his own, is he? So this is the sort of, these are just a few of the things and that LinkedIn is doing. Some of the dangerous aspects of it, and that in terms of what they're doing with the Chinese. Oh, well, there's another little bit here and that I should add in as well. When you had the Clinton-Trump election, and this is quite an important piece of information because it goes towards why you've got developed a particular part of Trump derangement syndrome. He donated money to Obama, first and foremost, in 2012, but he'd also been a donator to Hillary Clinton. Now, what he'd been doing with Hillary Clinton, I mean, nice little circle there, isn't it? Hillary Clinton, Epstein. Yeah. He considered himself to be the advisor to Hillary Clinton and was going to give all the guidance as to what the tech world was going to look like. Then when Trump won and he brought together a roundtable of all of the CEOs of the major tech companies, which he did with a bit of assistance from Peter Thiel, all that really wound this prick up because he wasn't invited. He wasn't considered important enough. So basically in that he had his fat little ego popped. Old Jabba the Hutt got quite upset with being deflated there, because he thought that sidling up with his pedo mates was going to get him a top spot, and it didn't happen. So that's why he's gone particularly demented. He's also spent time giving donations to various senators when they were doing when they've had their seats up for election, and this was around 2018 for North Dakota, Heidi Heitkamp, Missouri's Claire McCaskill, and Pennsylvania's Bob Casey. So he's quite clearly trying to make himself more important than he actually is. So one of the other organisations that's I don't believe is part of the World Economic Forum, but is equally as part of this mental case scenario, is the guys out at Y Combinator. If you're not familiar with them, look it up. A guy called Sam Altman, where he seems to believe that Reid Hoffman is one of the lead people in the resistance. The fucking resistance. I mean, if you've got Jabba the Hutt that's the top of the fucking resistance and that, I mean, you can just go on your hands and knees and that, and he still won't catch you. So, yeah, not exactly the smartest people that the Democrats have decided to get on board with. But let's go a little bit further, instead of me just sort of pondering every 2 seconds. Whole bunch of organisations that shit for brains, puts money into to feed his Trump derangement syndrome. So let's start off with the American Civil Liberties Union. Pain in the arse at the best of time, but when they're shouting for, well, being one of the lead voices to shout out about resignations for the Kenosha police chief after shooting a paedophile. Not a pedo. No, this one wasn't a pedo, was he? He was a rapist. Just a rapist. So, you know, obviously the people are sitting on the right side of law there, so naturally Jabba the Hutt has to give them money. That's really nice, isn't it? You know what side you're on there, don't you? So, obviously, but then again, I mean, if you're going around with Epstein and that, you're not really going to be part of the Me Too movement, are you? So yeah, he gives money to people that want to give support to rapists. Brilliant. Do the next part. This one is Win the Future, WTF. Yeah, apt. This one is done with one of his bum chums, Mark Pincus, who's got a gaming company called Zynga. I'm not into gaming, so I don't give a shit. The funny part to this, because this is exactly the sort of mentality of these people. So this there's an article that was obviously done by this Fast Company, and that's to do with this Pincus fella. So this is Pincus and Jabba the Hutt together. Where if you look at the top part where it says, healthcare is a right, not a privilege. We need visionary leaders in Congress fighting for people. So you want all this really expensive healthcare system and that, you know, the Obama stuff and that ended up costing everybody a bloody fortune. Leads to the second part of this, which is the third article at the bottom, about how the big tech companies have been avoiding billions in taxes. So you want to go out there and pretend to be, you know, essentially do the usual socialist shit. Government's supposed to do this, government's supposed to do that, but you don't want to pay for it. It's all got to be done off the back of somebody else. It's all got to be done off the back of the middle class, or something like that. Because you pricks, you don't want to put anything towards it. So it's very typical of these types of people. They will say all of the stuff that they think that they makes them appear wonderful in public, whilst in the background doing anything but, because they will not pay their fair share. Okay? So essentially what you've got there is what you'd expect. It's a liar. So just to be clear as to the companies that are involved in this shit, in terms of the failures to pay the taxes, it's pretty much what you'd expect. You got your Amazon's, Apple, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, which is where it also brings in Jabba the Hutt, and then Netflix. So there you go, there's another pedo link for you. Very cute. So yeah, these companies have they paid 155.3 billion less than what their taxes should have been, and then they want to turn around and whine about free healthcare. Yeah, wankers. Just some basics on this one. Democracy Works, another one that he's getting into. Now, the obvious name and the reason why I pulled this one up is because the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. So in bed with who you'd expect when you got the World Economic Forum, you got your Epsteins, you got your Clintons, you got your Great Reset crowd. You know, rules for thee and not for me. That's the sort of shit that he's getting involved with. Probably got an awful lot of that through being with bloody Clinton and Epstein. More than likely all sitting down and that jerking each other off in the same room, as they tend to do. Then you got the Higher Grounds Lab. And again, this is one of these political organisations, as is that Democracy Works. I mean, democracy works, my arse. It's our opinion and everybody else has to go to hell and everybody else has to pay for it. Yeah, sure. Higher Ground Labs, I've highlighted in with the red box there, and that their entire purpose is to help the progressives win. And anybody that knows anything about the bastardisation of language, progressive means regressive. Like I say, get somebody else to pay for everything. I love this one that he's been chucking money into, the Union of Concerned Scientists. This is an article that actually, this is not from the Union of Concerned Scientists. This is an article about who the Union of Concerned Scientists are, because they're not fucking scientists. I mean, their name gets bandied around so much when it comes down to this climate garbage. Not one of them has a clue what they're talking about. It's just, it's kind of like a, it's not far off like another version of excrement rebellion. I mean, these people are as thick as shit. I mean, if you asked them what a cloud was made of, they probably wouldn't bloody know the answer. So for, again, it's all of this virtue signalling. Oh, you know, they've got their themes. We've got the two key things in that they've been trying to push through, and that to be able to get all these control plans through. You know, you got the climate change, you're all going to die in 10 years, of course you are. Have a look at the latest Global Warming Policy Foundation report on the state of the climate in the US. Absolutely brilliant. It was just released today. So where are we? September the 18th. Excellent report. Shows fuck all's going on of any disaster. Nothing. No disasters. No great trials and tribulations. You know, you're not going to get a fucking, well, I can't even remember I can't remember what my bloody words are. What do you call it? The hail of locusts, or however the fuck it's supposed to be said. None of these things are taking place. The only Armageddon that is taking place is these pricks and the amount of lies they come out with. And that includes old Jabba the Hutt as well. So for him to be putting money into a bunch of liars, again, just goes to show the sort of person. Crowdpack. Highlighted two parts here, because Crowdpack was originally started with one of the founders with Steve Hilton. I'm still a bit wavy on Steve Hilton at the best of times anyway. But the fact that they fired him because, once again, you can't have any other opinion. And so they refuse. I mean, it's an organisation that's supposed to be able to assist with, like I said, I mean, they always come out with the rhetoric. It's supposed to be assisting with democracy, assisting with the electoral system, assisting with this, assisting with that. No, if you don't have our opinion, you're not allowed in. We're not going to be giving any money out or any assistance to anybody that doesn't have our point of view. This is it's the ultimate form with these people, with LinkedIn, that if you don't conform to our opinion, you're out. So they got rid of Steve Hilton, and they refused to give any fundraising assistance to Republicans. And you know, it was the second red box down that says how it was originally launched as a non-partisan platform, and it's become what we've become too accustomed to. It's just our point of view, which is that we're going to take all of your money, leave you in the shit. Typical socialist arseholes. So that's what they're concentrated on. The Dream Corps, I mean, I've put that picture up there, and not because that's one of the pictures that's on their bloody website. I mean, you want to walk around with a mask that says "I can't breathe." If you can't breathe in that one, don't take quite so much fentanyl. That might help. So you can get a good idea of what those prats are all about. This one is a little bit World Economic Forum-y in terms of cities of the future and all the plans for this, that and the other. Because on the face of it, you'll have a bunch of people that will look at the Centre on Rural Innovation. They'll go, right, well, okay, this could be something that is intended to help locations where there is insufficient employment and that the farming is starting to go down, etc., etc. Well, all of those sorts of plans are based around being able to push your farmers, your food producers, the rural communities out of those communities so that then they can have that land under their control rather than having it being held under individual ownership. So the destruction of, essentially what these people are doing, they're destroying the rural communities, and now they're trying to say that we're coming in to help them by getting these rural people and that involved in the digital economy. The digital economy, it goes back to this it goes back to this Industry 4.0, where there are things within Industry 4.0 that can be useful in terms of farming. I know a couple of people that are out in the States that's putting together some bloody amazing systems in terms of being able to deal with drainage and understanding the literally on a moment by moment basis how the weather is affecting the crops and things of this nature. That'll be useful stuff. These are the sorts of pricks though that will implement stuff to be able to take people away from having a better form of farming, a better system. They're looking towards getting some practice, learn to code and go off and join some shitty little gaming company so they can avoid paying tax on that and pay these people as a pittance, because it'll all get done from distance learning until they've pushed them out of those locations. I do not trust this one at all. This is very much one of these false flag scenarios. So, LinkedIn. There's more. There's more on these people. Say for example that other shitty organisations that he's invested in: Vote.org, Win Virginia, Change.org, PopVox. When you look at these sites and that, and you look at the people that are behind it and what the types of politics and single opinions that they're trying to push, there's a distinct pattern. This is the sort of individual that's thought, right, I've managed to get in bed with the pedos and the rapists and the scumbags. Obviously he fits in with that world, and so this is the sort of person that will end up going hell-bent to try to include the worst elements of what the Great Reset is all about. So, am I disappointed to no longer be on LinkedIn? Not in the slightest. Could not give a shit. I was there, made sure I made my opinions known while I was there, certainly didn't toe the line. Move on. You go to other places. The more people that show the dissenting voices, and you don't have to do it in quite the way that I did it. And like I said, I was very forthright in the things that I said. But test the waters. Like I said, first and foremost, in that if you're on there and that, and you've got any really key information about new ideas, new innovations, or things of that nature, whatever you do, take it offline. Deal with the people that you're supposed to be doing. It shouldn't really need saying. Do these things offline, and that's in your own systems. Don't be having these discussions on public platforms, because there are people watching. You need to be aware of that, and you need to avoid it. But apart from that, in terms of being able to express your own point of view, you don't have to follow the narrative. You don't have to follow this shit over. If you just apologise for saying something, or if you just change your point of view No, no. Never change your point of view unless you've actually been given a persuasive argument that actually does make sense. Do not change your view. Stick with your principles. Just for being on the, for the sake of being on a social media site, I mean, seriously, who gives a shit? It might be a little bit more difficult for younger people and that, because they weren't brought up in a world where this shit didn't exist. I mean, for me, and that's, I mean, I'm literally moving into 53 years old now. I couldn't give a toss. None of this shit existed when I was younger. I can cope without it perfectly fine. Which is why I'm doing this, obviously. But get a grip, get to understanding. Like I said, test the waters a little bit. See how much somebody is trying to put your persuasion somewhere. I mean, I did see also another comment in another article related to LinkedIn, where they had actually turned around and said that they were trying to give more of a conservative view on LinkedIn compared to other sites. It's not true. It is not true. Again, it's as per usual. They say one thing, they do another. There is not a single thing that comes out of these people's mouths that doesn't mean the exact opposite. I think there's been one of the more recently popular American Republicans, what's it, Casey Classich, something like that. She'd mentioned on the Tim Pool show recently that she was having some success on LinkedIn. That won't fucking last. She might want to be careful about that. And like I said, the only care that you need to be taking in terms of what it is that you say is don't give away any intellectual property. Don't give away any ideas. Don't let your key information be put in the public sphere. Goes to say across all platforms anyway. But above all, be very, very careful to understand who it is that's behind these types of organisations and what it is that they're doing. So when you've got somebody that is so clearly determined that he wants to be the little go-to boy, you know, I'm friends with Hillary, no, I'm going to be friends with Joe Biden. Oh, grow up, for fuck's sake. Silly little shit. Understand with the platforms who it is that you're dealing with. As I mean, I've not really gone into too much detail with Parler at the moment. I'm not finding it that interesting, if I'm honest. Minds is one that it's been going a few years now. They've obviously made some developments. At least the guy that runs it seems to be quite open, and he's also another one of these ones that says that, at least so far, says that he's interested in freedom of speech. You'll have people on LinkedIn that quite often happened with me, where you get people that will come in and make this statement: "Oh, don't put politics on this site. We don't want to talk about politics." The biggest ponces in the world, those people. The first ones to be going out and going, "Give me money, government." False flag bots, and they're all arseholes. So, I say, I enjoyed pissing people off on LinkedIn. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going back. I'm not apologising to these wankers. I'm not interested. I'll move on. People need to just give a little bit of consideration as to who it is that are actually giving support to. Because at the end of the day, if you have genuine interest into what your own country looks like, what the world looks like, what you want the future to look like, at some point there is going to be, hopefully not so far as some kind of bloody reckoning or anything like that, but there will be the occasion where you have to say, right, okay, we need to make a move. We need to go to somebody that's got a little bit more integrity. So, give that a bit of a thought when you're deciding where you're going to go and where you're going to put your details, what information you're going to be putting out. And particularly with you fellas out in the high value manufacturing, whether you want all of your key details to be ending up out in the possession of the Chinese Communist Party. Up to you. Right, I'll probably resume back to normal. I mean, I will still be having a go at everybody from the World Economic Forum, and I'll bring back the United Nations next week. Hopefully I'll be coming towards the end of the Cabinet Office investigations within the next 2 episodes, maybe. We'll see. But like I say, step by step. And I do it step by step so that people can actually follow what I'm talking about, rather than me just unloading in one great package. It'd be a fucking short series then, wouldn't it? But anyway, it's all stuff to think about. Make your opinions known. Moirai Directory will see us out. Have a good week, and I'll see you next time. Ta-da.